I want to have a discussion today about discussions. I want to have a talk today about talking, and I want to have a conversation around conversations. Because I believe that the most important thing that we could do to heal our families, our community, our world is have a deeper level of conversation. That when we talk just on the surface things, when we just get involved in all the superficial conversations that go around, we sometimes miss the deeper conversations that really are transformative, that really do make the difference. So my question to start today is, what's the most difficult conversation that you've ever had with someone? Is there one that comes to mind, something that you had to share with somebody or tell somebody or reveal to somebody, maybe even confess to somebody? There was a conversation that was absolutely tough. It maybe was felt a little gut-wrenching. It was a little overwhelming. And how did that feel? How did it turn out? Do you feel like you really were seen and heard and you felt liberated? Do you feel like the other person couldn't hold it at all and they just shut you down, shut the conversation down? How did that conversation go? Because I want you to see that when we feel that soul call to have a deeper conversation with someone, and they can hold it, they can create an opening to let us share our deepest desires, our needs, our wounds, our fears. When they can open to really allowing us to go deep in that conversation, it is incredibly transformative. It changes us. I can think of some of the deepest conversations I've ever had, some of the hardest conversations. And when the person was willing for me just to share what my needs or wants or desires, or when someone came to me to share something that was tough for them and I could just open the space to really listen to what they had to say, it was transformative. Because there's a sense of freedom that comes when you say the thing that you know you have to say. When your soul is demanding, the God in you is demanding that conversation. And when you actually have that conversation, it's as scary as heck before, and it feels like such a load has been lifted off your chest. The weight of the world is off. When you have that conversation and people can just create an opening so that you get to share it. So today it's all about that opening, that space that we can create for each other, and we can actually create even for ourselves, to share those things that need to be shared, to speak into those conditions, those wants, those needs, those deeper desires that we feel like that it's deeper than we've ever spoken about before. Because as a soul matures, the ground that we need to live in is just deeper and broader. And that requires deeper and broader conversations. So I've been using this book, Think Again, by Adam Grant. I'm doing a series of talks based on it. Today, I want to talk about really setting the table, if you will, for deeper conversations. And really, how do we establish an environment that allows those deeper conversations to be the most meaningful, where they're just not words, but they're a soul connecting to another soul. They're a heart connecting to another heart. They're a life connecting to another life. Because all of humanity, I believe that all of humanity, as the world becomes more online, as people become more disconnected from each other, there is such a need for those deeper connections that often come in conversations, that have to come in conversations where we reveal ourselves, where we share ourselves. And that's really what it's all about, is creating openings for these deeper conversations. Like in your family, in your world, and are you known as somebody who's open to that deeper conversation? Or are you the kind of the person that says, I don't want to hear about it, I don't want to know about it, I just shut it down. There's no point in talking about it. So let me begin. I'm going to share a longer story than I usually read, but it's such a powerful story that I wanted to share. One afternoon in Maryland in 1983, Daryl Davis arrived at the lounge to play piano at a country music gig. It wasn't the first time that he was the only black man in the room. But before that night was out, It would be the first time having a conversation with a white supremacist. After the show, an older man in the audience walked up to Daryl and told him that he was astonished to see a black musician playing like Jerry Lee Lewis. Daryl replied that he and Lewis were in fact friends, and that Lewis himself had acknowledged that his style was very much influenced by black musicians. Although the man was skeptical, he invited Daryl to sit down for a drink with him. Soon the man was admitting that he'd never had a drink with a black person before. Eventually explained to Daryl that he was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, the white supremacist hate group that had been responsible for murdering African Americans for over a century and had lynched a man just 2 years earlier. If you found yourself sitting down with someone who hated you and all the people who shared your skin color for just the opinion that, what would you do? Would you fight? Would you flight? Would you free? And rightly so. But Daryl didn't react this way. He burst out laughing. When the man pulled out his KKK membership card to show him that he wasn't joking, Daryl returned to the question that he'd been on his mind since he was 10 years old. In late 1960s, he was marching with his Cub Scout troop in a parade when the white spectators started throwing cans and rocks and bottles at him. It was the first time he remembered facing overt racism. And although he couldn't justify what they're doing, he didn't get angry. He said, "How could they hate me if they don't even know me?" At the end of the conversation, the Klanman handed Daryl this card with his phone number and asked that he would call him if he was ever playing in the local area. Daryl followed up, and in the next month, the man showed up with a bunch of his friends to see Daryl perform. Over time, a friendship grew, and the man ended up leaving the KKK. That was the turning point in Daryl's life, too. It wasn't long before Daryl was sitting down with the Imperial Wizard and the great dragons in the Ku Klux Klan hierarchy to ask his question. Since then, Daryl has convinced many white supremacists to leave the KKK and to abandon their hatred. I want to go on. One day, Daryl was driving his car with the chief operating officer of a KKK chapter, whose official title was the Exalted Cyclops. Before long, the Cyclops was sharing his stereotype of black people, that they were an inferior species. He said they had smaller brains, which made them unintelligent, and a genetic disposition toward violence. When Daryl pointed out that he was black, but had never shot anyone or ever stolen a car, the Cyclops told him that his criminal gene must be latent, and it just hadn't come out yet. Daryl decided to beat the Cyclops at his own game, and he challenged him to name 3 black serial killers. When the Cyclops couldn't even name any, Daryl rattled off a long list of well-known white serial killers and told the Cyclops that he must be one of them. When the Cyclops protested that he hadn't killed anybody, Daryl turned his own argument against him and said, "Well, you're just a serial killer, but with latent tendencies." "Well, that's stupid," flustered the Cyclops replied. "Well, duh," said Daryl. "You're right. What I said about you was stupid, but it's no more stupid than what you said about me." The Cyclops got very quiet and changed the subject. Several months later, he told Daryl that he was still thinking about that conversation, that Daryl had planted a seed of doubt and made him curious about his own beliefs. The Cyclops ended up quitting the KKK and giving Daryl his hood and his robe. Daryl doesn't do this by preaching or prosecuting. When he begins a dialogue with a white supremacist, many are initially surprised by his thoughtfulness. As they start to see him as an individual and spend more time with him, they often tap into a common identity around shared interests and topics like music. Over time, he helps them see that they were joining this hate group for reasons that weren't completely their own. It was a family tradition dating back multiple generations, or someone had told them that their jobs were being taken by black men. As they realized how little of this was actually true, how the stereotypes started to fall away. After getting to know Daryl, one imperial wizard didn't stop at leaving the KKK. He shut down his whole chapter. And years later, he asked Daryl to be his daughter's godfather. See, what I want you to see today is that tough conversations are always tough, but it doesn't mean we don't have them. It doesn't mean we don't engage in people who think differently or see differently than we do, who have a different life experience than we do. That the moment we're willing to just stop and just talk to the people in our own circle, in our own tribe, we become a nation that becomes more and more fractured. It then becomes more and more them and us. And what has always made our country great is the idea that united we stand, that we stand together. We don't stand in this group or that group. If we do, then divided we fall. That over and over again, what I want you to see is as a country, as individuals, as families, even in the church, we have a responsibility to have conversations with people that we don't always agree with, that may see life differently than we do, that may have their own points of view or perspectives or even prejudgments or ideas that are different than our own. But it still means that we have to be in a conversation with them so that we can move forward together, because we are always stronger together. Judy Ringer is an Aikido master, and she works in conflict resolution. And I really enjoy her website. And she talks about how to prepare yourself for difficult conversations. And she says, before having a difficult conversation, ask yourself some of these questions. What's the purpose of having this conversation? What do you hope to accomplish? What would be the ideal outcome? Watch for the hidden purpose. You may think that it's an honorable goal, like educating an employee or increasing connections with a teen, but often notice your language is excessively critical or condescending. You think you want support, but you end up punishing and pushing people away. Some purposes are more useful than others. Work on yourself so that you can enter the conversation as supportive as possible. Sometimes if you're going to be in a conversation with somebody that has a different point of view, the idea of being supportive is not what we land with. It's not what we jump into. We want them to know how wrong they are. Their ideas are wrong. They are wrong. And we want them to feel wrong. We want them to feel small. We want them to feel like idiots. So let's go on. She said, what assumptions are you making about that person's intention? You may feel intimidated, belittled, ignored, disrespected, or marginalized, but be curious about assuming that you know the speaker's intention. Impact does not necessarily equate to intention. She said, what buttons of yours are being pushed? Are you more emotional than the situation warrants? Take a look at your own backstory as it is if it was in a movie. What personal history is being triggered? You may still have the conversation, but you'll go into it more deeply with less emotion so that you can truly hear one another. She said, and your attitude toward the conversation influences your perception of it. If you think it's going to be horribly difficult, it probably will be. If you truly believe that whatever happens, that some good will come of it, then you're likely to have a better situation. And who's the opponent? That even looking at the person in the conversation as your opponent automatically puts distance between you and doesn't bring you together. What might be a better way to look at them? It's a family member, it's a friend, it's somebody in your community, somebody in your church, right? So we have to minimize the sense of differentness or that they're bad. 2, what needs or fears are you feeling in this experience? And what are the common desires or concerns? And how have you contributed to the problem, as has the other person? So I really want you to see this as really part of your spiritual life. You know, I can tell you from my own experience, being with people in relationship, husband and wife, in tough conversations with each other, with parents, with their children. You know, sometimes on the board of directors, there's tough conversations that we need to have with people. And sometimes it's as an employer to an employee. There are tough conversations. And as we get ourselves right, it's amazing how those conversations get easier. And for most of us, we were raised in environments where we were really taught to avoid all conflict. But friends, it's just not possible. What is possible is to be as loving, as kind, as understanding as we can be when we are in those conflicts, when we are in those conversations, when we're really trying to get not only see eye to eye, but to connect heart to heart and soul to soul. She said there are 4 steps to a successful outcome in one of these deep conversations. She said the first step is to be in a situation of inquiry. Cultivate a discovery, a curiosity. Pretend that you don't know anything about the situation, or pretend even that the person's from another planet. And you want to, because how many of us are in conversations where we're convinced that the person is from another planet? So if they are from another planet, then pay attention, be curious, try to understand their point of view. Because the truth is, we all want what we want. You know, we want our children to be safe. We want to be successful. We want to be happy. When you take us down to our basic level, we all want the same things. How we see about getting there can be very different, but we all want the same thing. We want to be loved. We want to be respected. We want to be safe. So the first is stay in the place of inquiry. Second one is acknowledgement. To acknowledge means that the other person gets to be heard. They get to be seen. They get to be respected. They get to be understood. And use your words to say, I hear you saying, or I hear that that's important to you, or I hear how deep of a feeling you have in that situation. To really acknowledge where the other person is coming from, because the more they feel acknowledged, the more they just take a breath and really feel like someone's right there listening to their needs. And the third is advocacy. When you sense that the other person is your opponent and that they have that you're at odds with them, then they feel like they have to defend their position. But when you begin to advocate, I want you to feel loved. I want you to feel respected. I want you to get your needs met, right? So that when we advocate for them, as much as we advocate for our own wants and needs and desires, it takes us to step 4, and that's problem solving. Then when people have really feel like they've been heard, when they've been seen, when they've been acknowledged, when they're not being made fun of, when you're not being critical, when you can get over that top layer of emotional activity, we can get to the heart of the matter. And when we get to the heart of the matter, the question really is, what do we both want? For most of us, the bottom line is always to be loved and respected. The universal theme for all of humanity is that we want to be loved and respected. Now, if you drive over my lawn or you cut down my favorite rose bush, it may be hard for me to feel loved and respected. But over and over again, that's what we want. That's what every parent wants from their teen. It's what every teen wants from their parent. It's what every partner wants from their spouse. We just want to be loved and respected. So let's look at 2 levels of conflict. And I want you to see this because it's so important. The first level of conflict is task conflict. And that's when you and someone else, you have a task, you have a mission. And this often happens in work, happens when sometimes the board of directors. It's when you have a task and going about the task, you see it differently. You want to go this way and your partner wants to go this way, right? And it's so helpful when you're having a task conflict to go down to what their vision is. You know, if your vision is to drive to LA, your partner's vision is to drive to New York, it is bound to create some problems because they're going to want to keep heading west and you're going to want to keep heading east. So when we haven't shared our vision, our deepest longing, our deepest desire, there is always going to be task conflict. Sometimes you see it in the board, sometimes you see it in staff, sometimes you see it in families. It's like, what's the task and what is the vision that we have? And so once we share the vision, once we move into agreement of the vision, it becomes much easier. If we're in agreement that we're going to New York, we might debate whether we're going to go down Interstate 40 or go down to Interstate 10, but that's really a choice. You might look at traffic, you might look at that, but it's a very different conversation when your partner wants to go to LA and you think, we're going to New York. Why do you keep launching and heading west? And the second level of conflict isn't task. It's when it becomes personal. And that's relationship conflict. And those are the harder ones. Because when we're in relationship conflict, we're in conflict with who each other is, how we're showing up, our choices, our values. Those are much harder. And those are oftentimes the conflicts where we have to take a deep breath, take a step back, and really check our agenda, to check our own belief system, to open our heart again, and really decide that the outcome or the relationship is more important than all the little bumps that we have. That I know in my own life that tough conversations, deeper conversations, have made my life infinitely better. But there's a human part of me every time that hopes and wishes and prays not to have those conversations. And it doesn't matter if it's with my kids or my spouse or with an employee. Sometimes those tough conversations, there's no part of me that wants to launch into a tough conversation. But when we do it from a spiritual point of view, when we do it from love, we actually can move the game forward in significant ways. So here's your homework. I want you to look at your life right now and see if there's a conversation that you're avoiding. Is there a conversation in your life right now that you've been putting off and not willing to have? And I invite you to take the items that we talked about today and really apply them, to really center yourself, to get yourself right, really figure out what it is that you want, you need, get yourself right, and then open the door to a deeper conversation to the people around you. As spiritual beings, I think it's fundamentally important that we take on these deeper conversations in our life, in our ministry, in our country, in our world, because it's only through those conversations that we can create a world that works for everybody. Will you take a deep breath with me? I want you to take just a moment now and feel the presence of God. That God is right where you are, right there. And that the presence and power of God is blessing you completely. And so it is. Amen. God bless you all. Have a great week, and I look forward to being with you next week. So let's just move into this time of prayer and meditation. I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to feel the presence of God that is right here, right now. And today we surround ourselves again in pure love. That love is the presence, it is the power that heals us, blesses us, and restores us. And with all that's going on in our life and in our world, pure love makes the difference. So breathe that in. Breathe that into every cell of your body. Pure love, God love, infinite love. And let every cell of your body resonate with this higher level of good. Pure love. Healing, blessing, and restoring you completely. Pure love. And that as your soul is filled to overflowing with the love of God, as your soul is immersed in pure love, when we feel the overflowing abundance of pure love, then we become generous with the ones around us. That when someone is angry or upset or confused, oftentimes they're lacking an overflowing sense of love. And from our own point of view, in our own life, there's an infinite amount of love, but we have to open the door. We have to allow it in. That God loves us with an infinite, unconditional love, but our heart decides by how open we open our heart. Our heart decides how much love we let into our life. Today, let your heart be fully open. Let it open not only outwardly toward the world, but inwardly toward you. That no matter what mistakes, no matter what has happened in the past, today we are generous with love. Infinite love, God love, overflowing love. Take a moment now in the silence. Let divine love heal you inside and out. Heal everything in your life. Restore your soul to the beauty and perfection that you were created to experience. And when you feel that your soul is filled to overflowing, we just spread that love in all directions. For our past and our future, for family and friends, we fill our whole world with love. But it all starts when we are filled from the inside out. Today we start this day with infinite love. And we go forth as an overflowing vessel of God's good. In the name and through the power of the living Christ, we give thanks. And so it is. Amen.